what makes a good business name? And furthermore, what makes a good website name for your business? You got to think like, gosh, is this going to be efficient? Is this even legal? You have to think, okay, what about branding down the road into the future? What are your customers? How are they going to relate to you? Think about your company culture and how are your employees going to identify with your business? It is a big decision, but I think what we need to do is take a step back and look at a bunch of different little bullet points that are going to make this a really easy process. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. And man, I am so excited. I'm here joined with a superstar attorney, JJ Childers, who is going to help answer those questions. And man, here we go. JJ, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here on this presentation because this is something that's very important. I think a lot of people get stopped really because they start thinking about a name and they say, well, I've got to have the perfect name. And then they spend all this time, and it's almost the paralysis of analysis that they are spending so much time trying to come up with a name. And then once they really settle on one, they do some research and they find out, well, that name's not even available. So then they're right back at square one. So I think people are going to really like what they learn in this particular lesson because it's vitally important that you understand how to choose, but then also how to get around the obstacle of not making that choice stop you dead in your tracks.
You know what? I love that you said that. And the interesting thing too is you don't have to nail it right at the beginning. You can always make changes. And I want to share with the group here a little history of my own company and some of the mistakes that we made. And maybe by taking this video course, you can avoid some of those mistakes and kind of go from zero to hero right out of the gate. So we got started back in 2009, okay, and now here we are, different brand. You can see this is our website, savvycfo.com, and this is our branding. You can see all these different services. Here we are. This is the bookkeeping service, for example. Okay, but it wasn't like this exactly at the beginning. And in the beginning, the business was named My Headquarters Pro. Okay, and we were trying to do some different things with headquarters functions, including HR and other services. But we really eventually got 100% honed in on who we are and what we do best. And that's when we rebranded a few years later in 2012 to My CFO Pro. And then, at that time, we were able to only get the .biz for our website. It always drove me nuts. Okay. I hated not being able to have that .com. And, the my in front of a word or a phrase, it ran its course. It was popular, a long time ago. It's not anymore. So that's when, you guys know Imran, when he and I put our heads together and we rebranded the business to Savvy CFO. Now we're savvycfo.com, as you would see on our website now. So did the business's name ever actually change? No, it didn't. The business's name started out as My Headquarters Pro LLC, and then we just added a DBA for My CFO Pro a few years later. And then a decade later, when we wanted to make another change to our brand and our name, we just changed the DBA again. So we're still My Headquarters Pro LLC, DBA, Savvy CFO. So you're not always going to be married to a name. You could change the LLC's name if you wanted to as well. It's just a lot easier to change the DBA. So let's get started. I want to work with you guys, kind of workshop something here, and let's make up a fictitious business name, okay? And let's run it through the gauntlet. Let's just see if it checks all the boxes. And we have a little checklist here of things that we've learned that kind of, in hindsight, those deal killers, okay, on picking a good business name. A lot of our, we've got a lot of clients in the real estate investing space. We do bookkeeping work for them, right? So I thought, okay, well, let's just go with an REI company name that doesn't exist anywhere yet, and just came up with this one as our example: Gold Bar REI LLC. So let's use that name as our example and go through all these different little scenarios of, does this make sense? Is this going to be a good name for us? Okay, ready, JJ? Can we do that together?
Hey, let's do it.
All right, man. Well, I'd appreciate it actually You being the superstar attorney, if you could kind of kick us off with probably the most important things is this name even available? So if you could take it away, just share with us some of that legal knowledge.
Yeah, so I tell you what, Tim, this is a very important area. And like I said, you don't want to get so bogged down in it that you don't start your business, because the most important thing is to actually have your business up and running. And a name is important, but sometimes people make it seem like it's the most important thing. And it's not the most important thing, but it's certainly an important thing. So let's talk about how to do that. One of the things you first want to make sure of from a legal standpoint is that the name is not already taken to the point where it's been trademarked. And when we talk about trademarked, that's for many people a foreign concept, because sure, they've heard about trademarks, but they don't necessarily know how they work, and they don't necessarily know how to find that. So I want to share just a little bit as far as what the process is that you need to go through in order to identify, is something trademarked, so that it's going to prohibit you from using that for your business. And the way that we begin by doing that is to go to the official website for that. And there's a website that covers both patents and trademarks, and it's the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So we find that at uspto.gov. Again, that's uspto.gov. So you go to that website and you check it out, and there is a section on that website where you can enter in a name where you're searching their database to see, you're doing what's called a trademark search. So there's a tab on there that says trademark search. And then when you go and you click that, you enter in the actual name that you're wanting to use, such as Gold Bar REI that you mentioned. And we find what is popping up there. What are we seeing? And sometimes it'll bring up things that are just totally different. Somehow they focused on the REI aspect of it more than the Gold Bar aspect. And you'll see the first one may be something that's got some REI tied into it, but you're going, that's not even close. So I'm not really worried about that. And then you may scroll down and you see some other ones, and they'll have things such as this one is dead, or this one's abandoned, or this one is in use. And you'll see what type of a business that it is. The primary thing that you want to identify, and kind of it takes some discernment in kind of making this determination. There may be one that's called Gold Bar, but it has nothing to do with real estate. And are we worried that the name Gold Bar is taken, so now we can't have our real estate business? Not necessarily, because what the trademark office does is they try to make a determination, is this going to be confusing in the eyes of the marketplace? Consumers out there in the marketplace, are they going to be confused to the point that they can't tell the difference between the Gold Bar that is trademarked versus the Gold Bar that we're trying to use? And if they're completely dissimilar, we're not as concerned about that. So that's something that we want to make sure we take a look at. Now, it's somewhat rare that a name is going to be taken exactly like yours, but it's something we have to take a look at, because the last thing you want to do is get your business set up, get your domain name, get the entity, get the EIN number from the IRS, all of that, only to find out that you've infringed on someone's trademark. So that's the process that you need to go through to make sure that the name that you are looking to use is not already in use by somebody else that has a trademark on it.
So JJ, if let's say I wanted to start a car company, an automobile manufacturing company, and I wanted to name it Chevrolet, how do you think that would go?
And that's not going to go over very well, or Chevy, anything that's going to be confusing in the minds of the consumers out there. But if I said, you know what, I want to start a company called, it could be, Chevro Motors. That's probably going to be available, because Chevrolet is different from Chevro. So even though they may say a Chevy or a Chevrolet, but it's just something you may want to then take the next step to say, okay, is that, even if you just do a Google search, find out if there is a Chevro Motors, and then we can check the domain, and then we can check the Secretary of State's website. All of these are additional steps that you can take that can help you determine if this name is available and if it's something that you may be able to use for your own company.
Oh yeah, JJ, man, that was a really good point that you made about the Secretary of State search. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Oh, absolutely. Because, really, that's probably the one that's going to be the most problematic for us. Because what I find is whenever I'm setting up a legal entity for one of my clients, I always have to look at the Secretary of State's website for the state in which they are planning to be originated, or where their articles are going to be filed. And we've talked about that in another one of our lessons. But as part of the overall process of setting up your business, you have to identify a name that's going to be available with the Secretary of State's office. Now, before you can file it, they typically, on most Secretaries of State's websites, they'll have a section for a name availability search, or they'll have something for a name reservation. So you can reserve the name before you actually file for your legal entity. And through that process, you're able to see what entities are already filed in that particular state that may conflict with the name that you're looking to use. And I think we've got an example for the state of Georgia, which is where you're located. So let's take a look at that and see how we can go through that process of identifying if the name is available.
Okay, very good, JJ. So I just pulled open. I did a little quick Google search to find out what the Secretary of State's um, website is for the state of Georgia. And of course, every state has their own website, right?
That's right.
Okay. So in Georgia, it's sos.ga.gov, and now we're here. So let's find out if the name Gold Bar REI LLC is available. So let's see, how would we do that? I think we would start here at business and the corporations division. Okay. And business search. So here we are. So from here, we can just type in whatever name it is that we want to find. So before we do the Gold Bar, let's find one that we know exists. So here, I'll put in my headquarters pro and it just contains anything with my headquarters, and there's my business. Okay. So we know that it's active, and it's unavailable for anybody else to try to create an LLC with that name. And we can go back. Let's do Gold Bar REI. Search. Perfect. No data found. We are good to go with Georgia if that's where we wanted to incorporate that business. But if you wanted to do this in a different state, it doesn't really make much of a like checking it on the Georgia website wouldn't do you any service, because you really need to figure out which state it is that you want to incorporate and then do the search on that Secretary of State's website.
Yeah, and one of the things, Tim, that you've got to make sure that what we are looking for when it said no data found, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. That's not always going to be the case. A lot of times you may enter your search and all of a sudden it's going to pull up some similar names. And as long as the name that you're looking to use is not too similar, so much so that it would cause confusion, is typically going to be authorized by the Secretary of State. Now, that being said, I have had many instances, and some states are a little more difficult than others, that some of the states will say, no, this is too confusing, it's too similar. And I'm going, how on earth is somebody going to get confused between Gold Bar Plumbing and Gold Bar REI? But at the same time, they have actually said, no, sorry, we will not authorize this one. So it gets denied. And then you have to go back and start again. So that's just something that you're going to want to take a look at before you start doing all sorts of investing or creating or really moving forward with that name. You want to make sure that you've got their name reserved. A lot of states will have those name reservation parts of the website where you can actually reserve that name, and then you know that it's been authorized. So that's just an important point just to kind of consider in this overall process.
Okay, perfect. So I changed the search from Gold Bar REI to just Gold Bar, and you can look at this page, and there's maybe a dozen variations that came up, but scanning through them, none of them have anything to do with real estate investing, as far as I can
Well,
tell.
here's what you notice, that on here there's a Gold Bar Investments and then there's Gold Bar Solutions. Now, what can we take away from that? What we can take away is if we're trying to figure out if our name is too similar, look at these names. Are these names very similar? Well, Solutions, Investments, that's not completely similar by any means, but at the same time, it shows you that if we come up with Gold Bar REI, it's probably going to be authorized because they've already demonstrated that they will allow things that are using the same words as long as they're a little bit different. So that's just something to factor in as well. And that can kind of give you some insight into how the process works.
Beautiful, beautiful. Would you also say that maybe are there any other government entities in the registration process for a new business name that one might want to consider beyond the trademarks and the Secretary of State?
Yeah, and this is something it's pretty rare. However, it's something that I have encountered, so I just want to make people aware of this. And that is, I have had times where I've done the trademark search, everything was fine. I did a Google search, I didn't see anything anywhere. I did a searched with the Secretary of State. They authorized it. We even got the entity set up. But then when it came time to file for the taxpayer identification number through the SS4 to get our EIN with the IRS, which is something we'll talk about in other lessons, but basically they denied the issuance of that taxpayer identification number because they said, sorry, this name is already taken in our system. So, and again, that's rare, but it's just something to be aware of because I don't want people to freak out that if you get denied, all of a sudden that the IRS, sometimes people are terrified of the IRS. And anytime they get any sort of adverse reaction from the IRS, they think, oh my gosh, what have I done? They're going to come after me. That's not the case. It's basically just saying, hey, you're going to have to do something else. So we've had to do something and maybe put a little bit different name with the IRS even, and then we're able to move forward once that EIN is issued by the IRS, and now you're good to go.
Okay, cool. So we now legally have a green light to move forward. But what is the website's name going to be? Okay, we might have figured out, okay, well, this is cool. We've got a business name, we've got a green light to move forward. The name is available, but is there good real estate, so to speak, on the internet for us to have a website that makes sense with our business name? So the next big step that I would take here in this process is I would go to one of the sites where you can buy websites, domains, and they'll let you know what is and is not available. Like, for example, GoDaddy.com or Namecheap.com. So that's our next step. Let's go take a look and see if we can reserve Gold Bar REI. All right, great. So we're here at GoDaddy.com. Let's just do a quick test and see if Gold Bar REI is available. So we just type it in. Man, we are lucky. Goldbarrei.com is available, and you can click here and make it yours and reserve and own that domain, and you can build your website right there. That's perfect. Let's continue with this domain name and see if it passes the tests that we're going to make it run through for the rest of our checklist. Okay, perfect. So now let's avoid confusion with some things that we see pretty regularly, like, for example, creative spellings. I would stay away from a creative spelling if you can avoid it, because then you're going to be explaining it to people every single time you bring it up. So like the example here, allstars.com versus allstars with a z.com. You're always going to have to be explaining that to people that, okay, you spelled with a z. And then it's like, okay, well, it's just an efficiency thing that you can avoid. Number 2, business type misaligned. Sounds obvious, right? But you would never name a coffee company Rapid Tires LLC. So just keep that in mind. Keep things aligned and not misaligned. And then the third bullet point on the slide is something that I watched firsthand with a client of ours for years. And the example here to represent that is naming your business almost exactly like a different existing business with a tiny little tweak, and it's in the same industry, right? So you wouldn't want to ideally name your company Four Seasons Roofing with a number 4 if somebody else in your area is already named Four Seasons Roofing, FOUR. You're going to probably experience similar things like we watched the other client, where other leads for new business were going to the other company and vice versa, and customers were calling the wrong business, and it caused problems. So I'd stay away from that. Some more places where you can consider for efficiency increases is the fewer the characters in your website, the better. So think about Sports Illustrated. I love theirs. It's www.si.com. It doesn't get much better than that. And the opposite side of that coin that I would stay as far away from as possible is just having a really long website. And the example here is kind of a joke, but we jump through the hoops so you do not have to.com. Ridiculous. It just proves a point, right? Next bullet point, elevator speech introduction. Think about how you would be introducing yourself. My name's Tim Crulia with Savvy CFO. We do bookkeeping, accounting, and CFO services for our clients. Perfect. Hi, my name's Tim Crulia with Gold Bar REI. We do real estate deals for our customers. Easy, rolls right off the tongue. Think about a customer service representative answering your phones. Hi, my name's Tim Crulia with Savvy CFO. May I help you? Hi, my name's Tim Crulia with Gold Bar REI. How may I help you? Piece of cake. No, say your name and an email address. Okay, Tim at savvycfo.com. Tim at goldbarrei.com. It's passing all the tests. Could you imagine your email address being Tim at we jump through hoops so you do not have to.com? See, you get the point.
Or, one of the things that I always like to think of is the ease of use and the efficiency of what you're going to call your company and what your domain name is going to be. For instance, the fewer characters you have, the better. Sometimes I see people that'll put these long, drawn out names, and I say, well, good luck having your prospects or your customers even remembering all of that and making sure that they spell it right. The more characters that you have in there, the more opportunities there are for somebody to mess it up. So the simpler we can keep it, the better. So let's take a look at something. For instance, we give this illustration where it says, we jump through the hoops so you do not have to.com. Versus when you look at Sports Illustrated, theirs is www.si.com. Now, the hard part about that is you're probably going to have to find some sort of a middle ground because most of the two character domains, they're all taken. Well, that doesn't mean that you have to go at length to spell everything out because, again, the longer that it is, the more opportunities for people to mess things up. So try to keep it simple if at all possible. And then you've got to think about when you're talking with people, when you're explaining who you are, what you do, when you're giving your contact information, you want to make it simple for them. If they have to remember or you have to explain something, Tim mentioned earlier that all stars, versus all stars with a Z, you don't want to have to say that to people. You say, remember, it's all stars with a Z. And they may be thinking, okay, I've got to try to remember that. Don't make them have to remember a lot of stuff. Just try to keep it simple so that it can be easy for them to access your company.
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, JJ. Love it, man. Let's talk about some versatility in a website name. Okay, I personally think it's good to be a little bit vague because it gives you the opportunity to pivot a little bit in your core service offerings from time to time. Like, good examples. Amazon. They started out as a book selling company online, and now they sell everything in the universe, right? Netflix, they were selling DVDs and mailing them originally. Now they're the most awesome streaming service on the planet. And then I put this in there too, and referring back to my wife's company, Destination323.com. She started that business as a Airbnb real estate investing business, and she pivoted to a company that is doing the fulfilled by Amazon model, and didn't need to change the name. It makes perfect sense. It's vague enough, so that's not important, and she can make that change. Next bullet is: are you excited about sprouting marketing ideas from your business's name? I think I love this kind of topic and this conversation, and we've had a lot of fun with our name because we've been naming and using that word savvy in the product names that we've been coming out. Like, we have a product named the Savvy Cycler. Obviously, we are our main service is Savvy CFO. We are creating this product for you guys here called Savvy Startup. We love this. It's creating a little bit of a brand recognition for us. Can you visualize a logo? Does something come to your mind when you're thinking about Gold Bar REI? Well, I'm thinking about a gold bar, and I'm thinking about a picture of a house, and I'm wondering how can I make those come together so that this makes a ton of sense and it looks really great. What about a slogan? Right? Okay, Gold Bar REI. We offer the gold standard of service or the gold standard of real estate investing. So something like that. I think it kind of just fits. And then let's see. Can you visualize the name resonating with your target customer? That is a great question, and I think you got to kind of answer it on your own in your own way. But man, I think of savvy being a word that's used that resonates with people thinking, okay, that's an intelligent person who's going to figure out a way to solve a problem. And then if I think about gold bar, REI, it immediately tells me this is real estate investment. And it tells me that it makes me think about gold and something that's precious and valuable. So I think it passes all of these tests so far. And even if even if you think it passes all the tests and you set up your business and you run with it, like I said, you're not married to it. Okay. One of our clients for a long time, they started their business. They named it Private Money Blueprint LLC. Okay. They eventually changed their name to Awesome REI LLC. And then they changed their business's name again to Awesomely LLC. Okay. And every time they've just been defining who they are a little bit better. And then they change their business name um, and they take those next steps in their business's journey. So, yeah, JJ, have you had any experience with businesses that have changed their names and why they've done that?
Yeah, quite a bit. Actually, I've done it a lot of it myself, just with businesses that I had. Maybe I set up an entity for a particular purpose. That purpose ran its course. So I said, okay, well, I've already got an entity set up. What could I do with this? And what I'll do is I'll file a fictitious name, which is that DBA.
Yeah.
Typically, we go back to that Secretary of State's website that you referenced earlier. And on that site, there will be a place where you can apply. You fill out an application for a fictitious name. And then when you do that, you can completely rebrand that entity and you can get a new domain. You can do whatever you want to. You can completely change the purpose of that entity as well. So I've done that quite a bit for myself, but I've also done it for countless clients. So it's not a difficult process, but it is different. So that's something that you just want to think through and just realize that you have multiple options.
Well, let's summarize this whole video real quick. First of all, make a list of business names that you like. Okay. Second, follow those steps. Make sure they're available. Trademark, Secretary of State. Check to make sure you've got a web domain, something that is going to make perfect sense for you for the long term. Then, go through and ask yourselves those qualifying questions that we were working through in this video, top to bottom. Now, go buy that domain. Okay. Next, go register that business with the Secretary of State in your state. Trademark the name. Make sure you got the SS4 form through the irs.gov website. And you are ready to go. Thank you so much for joining us. JJ, thanks so much for all your insights. It was very helpful. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.